Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Kara Platoni. Kara, a native of Irvine, is a graduate of Scripps and the Graduate School of Journalism, class of 1999. She was that year's student speaker. A beloved teacher, she now helps to teach our basic required course, J200, the one that focuses on Oakland. And she also teaches a new undergraduate basic reporting class. Now, in case you were wondering, Kara Platoni's name rhymes with scare a bad pony. And in December 2010, her students from this year's graduating class gave her a gift emblazoned with scare a bad pony. It was in Chinese. Kara, I sort of debriefed her before as preparing my introduction. She says she doesn't remember much of the speech she gave in 1999, but her master's project, Oakland is Wired, lives on. Here is a copy. Please welcome Kara Platoni.
Hi, everyone. Hi, almost graduates. Thank you for choosing me to give you one last lecture. I am excited / totally terrified. One of the reasons that I'm excited / totally terrified is that I have not worn high heels to a J-school function since 1998. I was in Susan Rasky's political reporting class, and she took us to the Republican state convention. And I ended up chasing Matt Drudge down a flight of stairs and into the back of his limousine, because he'd just given me this really great interview, and then I looked down and I realized the pause button was still down on my tape recorder. So in the event of another inauspicious beginning, like if I just fall over, let's all just make a vow right now that this is off the record. So by laughing, you've consented and you're all locked in. You guys, I'm gonna get to you guys in a moment. First, friends and family, I wanted to thank you for loaning us your loved one for 2 years. We'll return them to you shortly, slightly battered. Also, because the J School can be kind of weird the first time you visit, I wanted to let you know, don't be alarmed by the extremely high number of people photo documenting every single thing you're going to do today. And also, don't be alarmed by the extremely high number of people who are going to be photo documenting the people who are doing the photo documenting. Because that's just what we do. In fact, I think the most quintessential J School moment I ever had is I was teaching in the library and I looked out into this courtyard and I saw, I believe it was David Ferry, down on one knee, iPhone in hand, taking a close-up picture of a squirrel. And behind him, down on one knee, iPhone in hand, was another student taking a picture of David Ferry. And if I had a camera, I would have taken a picture right then, because that would have been cool. So now that we've been caught up, we can move on to the giving of some serious advice. Okay, you guys. I feel like I just met you. It seems like just yesterday we were all in that room and it was orientation, and I was telling you that you were the best looking incoming class we'd ever had at this J School. Yeah, what the heck happened to you, dudes? I'm kidding. I know exactly what happened to you dudes. It was those dudes. And it was also a lot of deadlines, a lot of late nights, a lot of all-nighters, a lot of attempted all-nighters that turned into nights spent on the lower newsroom couch. Don't be embarrassed, all of us have done it, Ted Troutman. Now, I know it's traditional at J-School graduations to talk about change, and in the 15 years since I started here as a student, we've used this podium a lot to talk about change. Change in the industry of journalism, change in the technology of journalism, and let me just say we have not always been super cool about it. There's been a certain amount of fretting and kind of an overall atmosphere of OMG, right? And it's true, a lot has happened really fast. For example, this is my advanced radio homework from 1998. And I spent most of my last year here at school working on this crazy project, doing something called building a website for the East Bay Express, which was the newspaper that became my first employer. You guys want to see this website? It's on something called a zip disk. Behold, You were the first people to see one of these since 2002. It contains an amazing 100 megabytes of data. It used to cost about $13, and I used to have to beg my editor to let me requisition these, which, I mean, to be fair, $13 in 1999 was probably about $1 million in today's dollars. So, whoa, oh! I think it makes my point. So at the time, the argument that new technology or new ways of doing journalism was a good idea or an idea that had any sticking power was really debatable. I remember I had an editor at the Express who pulled me aside once in the hallway and said, "Ms. Platoni, the Express will never have a website." And it's true, at that time, the print version of the Express was so fat, it had so many advertisements and therefore so much copy we could stick in the paper that we actually broke the printing press one day. We actually broke the folding apparatus on the printing machine because it was so thick, trying to jam it through. Well, things changed for that paper and for the industry. You might have noticed that here at the school, now we often say text instead of print because it's just as likely that somebody's going to read your words on a screen as they are on a piece of paper. Even something as simple as the telephone is different. When I was a student here, there were only 4 telephones in the newsroom, and they were all landlines, and nobody was allowed to touch them. We would all circle them like angry sharks, making sure that nobody dialed out because we were all waiting for our sources to call. Now there are 4 of you on an iPhone at any given time in that newsroom, including during my lectures. The daily practice of journalism went from analog to digital really fast. Now, when you crop a photo, you don't have to go to a dark room and print something out on a piece of paper and use a physical cropping tool, right? You hit a button on Photoshop that has an image of a cropping tool. And you don't have to cut this with razors and tape anymore, right? You don't have to splice with a grease pencil and a piece of tape. You hit Open Apple E. But as different as these things look, I want to argue that it doesn't matter. Razors, crop tools, Open Apple E, these are all just signposts that point at the same idea, which is make it shorter, right? That principle that you should pick out the most important information and use it to focus your storytelling, that hasn't changed at all. And these storytelling principles, these are what you came here to learn. So it's the nature of technology to be transitional, and it's the nature of business to adapt and to change. And let's stop worrying about that. Let's focus on the kind of change that you came here to achieve. Not out there, right, but change that's in here. In other words, let's forget about hardware and let's talk about software. You came to graduate school to change the way you think, to change the way you work, to change the spectrum of what you're capable of doing. Over the past 2 years, you have rebuilt the way your brain thinks about storytelling. You know what's a good story, and you know what's a great story, and you know how big the gap is between a good and a great story. It's now just something that you feel inside of you, and it's something that seems natural, but it's not. It's something you learned. You understand narrative and story structure and point of view, all the things that you could have taken for granted before, but now you appreciate them as construction, as craft, as art. You understand the beauty of light. You understand the fragility of motion. You understand the heft of a well-turned phrase. You know what it feels like to be in flow, that mental state when you write or you shoot or you edit without seeming to think about it, when you're just in a state of pure creation. You know how awesome it is to make stuff, to see something come from nothing. You know the pain of making stuff that's not quite as good as you hoped it would be. You know what it's like to rewrite and to reshoot and to edit and to edit and to edit until it's better. You know what it feels like to put your work out into the public and to see how other people react to it. You see what it's like to have your work affect people's lives, and you know the responsibility of affecting people's lives. And you know what it's like to work with each other. You know what it is to be a crew, to lead a crew, to crew for someone whose project you care about just as much as you care about your own. And that may be the most important change that happened, which is that you came in alone and you leave here with people. The people here will be your crew for life, and you will continue to build together and teach each other, just as while you were here, we built together and we taught each other. And so no matter what the camera, say, of the future looks like, I hope that when you hold it, whatever it is, you hear this little voice in your head, and this little voice sounds like Richard Cochi Hernandez, and it says, wait for the moment. And when you go to shape a story in the future, no matter what your medium, I hope you hear this little voice that sounds like Cynthia Gorney. And I hope it says, what's this story about? And then I hope it pauses. And then I hope it says, no, what's this story really about? And when you work in the newsroom of the future, which I can only imagine is some sort of space newsroom, I hope you hear this little voice in your head that sounds like Paul Grabowitz and that it says, well, actually, we're in polite company, so you'll just have to imagine what the voice of Paul Grabowitz says. There is a long road ahead for all of us, and the landscape will keep changing. Well, that's fine. Things outside, they change fast. But the things you learned here, you can keep them forever. And that's one reason why, even though these things don't work, I still do. And you will too. It's been my pleasure, and it's been an honor to work with you. I am super proud of you. I am so excited to know what adventures you will have next. And in the future, if you're out reporting the space news, and you happen to hear a little voice in your head that sounds like me, I hope that this is what it says. I hope it says, be brave, stick together, and keep making stuff. Congratulations to all of you.